Hello and welcome to the Money Shift YouTube channel. I am Thanasi and this is a, get ready, 2019 Volvo S60 T6 all-wheel drive R design. So what does that mean? So because this car is a T6, it means it has a direct injected, turbocharged and supercharged 4-cylinder engine that makes 316 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque. And because it is the R design, you get this nice body kit, which includes those integrated exhaust tips, these semi-attractive wheels, and just an overall sportier appearance, which goes to the inside as well, and we'll get to that more in a second. But one of the interesting design elements are these fenders. They're dimpled, but they look wide body when you look at it from a little far away. And these headlights will stand the test of time. They look glorious. But let's go inside. Inside is where things get a bit interesting in the Volvo. So we'll start by talking about this steering wheel, and boy, is it comfy. Squishy leather, perfect width, but what sucks is these gloss black buttons. I don't know if you can even see fingerprints on there already, but they're there. The instrument cluster is fully digital, looks clear, and it's very responsive. Where I have a headache, though, is how this center stack deals with CarPlay. Look how big this screen is, and it's relatively quick, as you can see as I try to swipe and hold a camera at the same time. But when you click into CarPlay, it only takes up a portion of the screen, and that portion is on the bottom half. It isn't even on the top half. So yes, it's clear and whatever, but what the heck? I love the drive mode selector here. I love the start-stop little switch there. But the best part about the Volvo S60 interior, aside from this really nice panoramic sunroof, are these seats. Oh boy, are these the best seats of the segment, and it's not even close. They do an incredible job at hugging your body regardless of how wide you are. And with that said, let's get out on the back roads to see how they hold us in place on some twisties. All right, everybody, we threw this Volvo S60 into sport mode. Let's get on to these awesome New England back roads and see, is this sporty enough? Did Volvo do enough to make this car compete with the likes of the Genesis G70 and the BMW 3 Series on the back roads? Let's take a left and find out. When we get onto this little straight portion, we'll start with a little acceleration test. Ready? I'll floor it right now. Kicks down. Goes pretty good. Little extra gas when you let off the gas there, in that the car carried a little bit. But it did scoot. It kicked down relatively quickly. How's the chassis? I think it's actually really good. This Volvo in the corners feels incredibly flat. It rotates very, very well, incredibly well. And I think that's a testament to both the chassis and the all-wheel drive system. When you push it out of a corner, it just eats it up and goes for it. It's really, really playful in that sense. But how's the steering? Because in these back roads, we're doing a lot of turning, so you feel, or you hope that you feel where the wheels are pointing in that straight line. And do you get that same sense? Yikes, that was a state policeman. We're okay. Do you get that same sense in this car? Do you feel anything? Not really. Not really at all, actually. And that is where this car falls a little flat. I think the engine, you can take it or leave it for the noise. I personally like it, but I can understand those that don't. The chassis itself is relatively flat. The all-wheel drive system does a great job at pulling this car around corners, even though it is a front-wheel drive-based car. But the two things that really let this car down in the backroads portion are this steering and is this transmission. So as we get to this more curvy portion, I'll really go into detail as to why. Okay, now we're in the curves. Let's talk a little bit about this steering and transmission. So this steering is, honestly, it is like a Fanatec steering wheel or a Thrustmaster steering wheel. There is no feel here. It is 100% synthetic. And in the sportiest of modes here, yes, it does have a little extra weighting, which is nice. But in terms of feel, I can't tell. I'm hoping that the tires are going the direction I want, honestly. And in terms of this transmission, if you're using these paddles, be prepared for a delay. Ready for this? Listen, I'm gonna shift down going 48 miles an hour. Ready? Now it did it. Now it did it to third. Will it go to second? Did you hear how long that took? It's definitely not responsive. And for a car that hopes to compete with the likes of a 330 M Sport or a Audi with an S-Line pack or even a G70 2OT, it's gotta be better than that. Those cars' automatic transmissions are dynamite. They're very quick, they're very responsive. You can see it in our BMW 228i review, but that ZF Auto is really, really good, and those cars have that down. They do not use a ZF here at Volvo, and it shows, or at least the tuning on this transmission shows. It's nowhere near in the same department as BMW or Genesis or Audi or things like that. So overall, in the backroad section, the Volvo S60 is definitely fun to drive. The chassis is really, really good. And the sounds are great. You can hear the turbo and the supercharger, etc., etc. But where it falls on its face is that steering and is that gearbox. It just can't hold a candle to the competitors. But can it on the highway? Is this where the Volvo comes to life? And is this the reason why you should buy one? Let's find out. Okay, let's accelerate up to highway speeds here, and let's talk about a couple things with this Volvo S60. So on the highway portion, one of the things that I like to pay attention to is not only the interior noise, but how this dash, how this center stack, and how the car feels at speed. So now that we're up to 75, what are the things that we note when looking at the instrument cluster and when looking at the dash? Well, the one thing that I do really like about this instrument cluster and this heads-up display is the speed warning. So the speed on this highway, like most, is 65. And where this car differentiates itself from others that I've seen in this segment is not only will it tell you with a little speed limit 65 sign that looks like one you would see on the highway what the speed limit is, but it also tells you on the speedometer. There's a little red line that appears that is right dead on where the speed limit is. So there truly is no excuse in this car for going above the speed limit. None at all. As much as you'd like to get one, there really isn't any. So how's this big center screen? Well, I thought I was really going to love it, and it is overall pretty good. It's incredibly responsive and it's really, really clear, but it does let me down a little bit. And my biggest gripe is how it shows Apple CarPlay. You guys know how much I love Android Auto and Apple CarPlay and how much I profess that, well, if a car has it, its nav screen is fine because that's all I'm going to use. And that's true, it is fine. But where Volvo missed out was maximizing the real estate. The Apple CarPlay in this car only takes up maybe 50% of the screen, and they really could have done something interesting here where maybe they had the top half, the normal view, and the bottom half your apps, so you didn't have to go out of your screen or something. They could have leveraged more of that screen, and instead it just looks like a tack-on in the center, which is a big, big drag. But overall, how does the car drive on the highway? Really, really great. This car is incredibly quiet. It does an incredible job at keeping the noise out and keeping the quiet in. The Pilot Pro Assist, which is this car's adaptive cruise and lane keep, does an incredible job, actually. I mean, this road is probably the most favorable to those systems. As you guys can see, the lines on the corners are really clear, and the center line is very clear. Everything is really, really clear, so this highway really gives these cars their best shot at doing well, and this Volvo does an incredible job. I mean, you guys can see it, but it's doing, I'm using it this whole time, so it's keeping the car within the lane. I'll let my hands off the steering wheel right now, and we'll see how long this can go. So we'll start the timer right now, but yeah, so my hands are completely off the steering wheel on the highway. We're cruising at about 75 miles an hour, taking a turn, no problem. And it hasn't let me know yet, hasn't notified. Now it has. So it notified me to apply steering maybe like 15, 20 seconds in. And that's great. I mean, these cars aren't fully autonomous yet. So it's good that it notifies you. But overall, I'm really impressed with this Volvo on the highway. It is definitely quieter than an equivalently priced G70, and I would say it's on par with a 3 Series of a similar class. It just does a really good job at keeping noises out and keeping the quiet in and being comfortable. But let's see if it continues with that momentum on the around the town portion, because when we're around town, we not only talk about how the car does, but we talk about its competition, and that is where the Volvo becomes interesting. Okay, back roads, check. Car did well, steering was very vague, transmission was slow. Highway, check. Honestly, perfect marks for me. The only knock for me on the highway for this Volvo was that big instrument cluster, or excuse me, big center stack, not leveraging its full screen potential for something like Apple CarPlay. So let's get to the around town portion. How does this car do when we click the drive mode selector, put it in eco, and coast? How does this car do? Well, it's interesting because when you change this car to eco, even though it isn't a hybrid like a lot of the Volvos are in the T8s or just another hybrid, it does change the rev limiter on the right of the speedometer to this sort of like E-gauge. It lets you know when you're coasting, which is cool. But yeah, it fluctuates all over the place depending on how much speed you're giving it, which is interesting, I guess, but it's kind of weird because this car isn't a hybrid. But yeah, anyway, back to the Volvo. How does this car do around town? The first thing you notice around town is these seats. Holy cow, are these the greatest seats in the segment? And it's not even close. I don't know who at BMW or who at Genesis or who at Audi is in charge of competitor tracking in terms of like what the competition is doing. But they're not doing enough in the seat department, because Volvo has been producing the best front seats in the segment for the better part of 10 years now, plus, and no one has come close. No one. I mean, the Lincoln Continental has tremendous front seats, but that's obviously not in this segment. But you can move almost every part of these seats and really contour them to your body type. I mean, again, I'm 6 feet, 280 pounds, and I'm comfortable in this car. And I'm sure if you were smaller, like an average size human, you would also be comfortable in this car. These seats are just that good from a customization and customability was a word I was just about to say. But from being able to personalize it to you, they're incredible at that. And in this around town portion, where you're going to be spending a lot of time in these seats in the around town or in traffic and things like that, having a really comfortable front seat is key. Where this car does miss out on compared to its competitors is ventilated seats. They're not here, which is interesting for something that has these sort of two-tone seats. You can see it's like a cloth and leather, because this is, again, the T6 model, so this is the sportier one. You'd think that they would be there, but they aren't, which is a little bit of a drag. But anyway, so how does the Volvo S60 stack up to its competition? We've already established that it does okay on the back road and excellent on the highway, and in this around town portion, it's great as well. I mean, I think the car moves really well. This transmission is a little clunky, but in the around town portion, that doesn't really bite you in the ass that much when you're not. Yes, you are going from 0 to whatever and back to 0, but you're not really doing a lot of aggressive shifting or things like that. So even though it's a little lax, it's still just fine. So how does the car do in comparison to its competitors? Well, I want to highlight two specifically. I'm going to talk about the Genesis G70, and I'm going to talk about the BMW 3 Series. And the reason why I'm skirting the C-Class and the A4 and other cars in this segment isn't because they're bad, it's because really the BMW 3 Series is the pinnacle of this segment from a sales perspective. I mean, they sell unbelievably well, and you'll see them everywhere regardless of their features, right? Regardless of how good it is, the BMW will always sell. And then there's the G70, which is the new kid on the block from Hyundai's luxury division, Genesis, right? So how does the Volvo stack up to those two? Well, this S60 is all new, and I will say when it comes to the looks department, it looks the best on the outside. The S60 looks are dynamite, and I think this car will age incredibly well. And you want to talk about perceived obsolescence, the notion that a company saves sort of new features and things so that old users will buy them. Volvo did that unbelievably well. I mean, if you put this next to an old Volvo S60, holy cow, the old Volvo S60 looks ancient in comparison. Even if it's just a year difference, it looks so old. This new design language from Volvo is just that good. It is really, really great, and it blows the G70 and the 3 Series out of the water, in my opinion. How's the interior in comparison to those cars? Now, this is actually where I think the Volvo lags a lot, and the reason why you don't see a lot of Volvo S60s on the road in comparison to things like the BMW 3 Series. And that's because it's kind of hard to use. Just talking about this a little further, what I mean is you have to take your eyes off the road if you want to adjust anything in this center stack. Yes, it is really huge. Yes, it is really responsive, but if I want to do anything, there's no buttons. There's no hard buttons for me. The only hard buttons here are for the defroster front and rear, and for next track, and to turn up and turn down and pause the volume and the music. That's it. So if I want to change the aircon temperature, I got to use this dash. If I want to turn on the heated seats, I got to use this dash. If I want to do anything else, I have to use this center console. And where cars like the Genesis G70 and BMW 3 Series exceed is you don't. I know a lot of people that don't even use any of the technology features that the car offers. And all they care about is being able to, you know, turn up and turn down the AC and turn on their heated seats, cooled seats, whatever, what have you. And that's all. Oh, that was weird. We had someone take a right turn and the car kind of slowed down even though we weren't close. But anyway, Volvo, overly safe, whatever. And that's where this car falls flat, is if you're someone who doesn't care about tech, like quite frankly a lot of BMW or just that segment users do, they just care about getting into a car that's nice, comfortable, classy, looks good, and they want something that is user-friendly. This Volvo just isn't it. And that's where it loses a lot of people. And Volvo needs to figure it out, because they are not selling this S60 well. In fact, even though it's built in the USA and they created a car that was very appealing in the looks department, it's just not user-friendly. And because of that, they're turning off a lot of their user base. Are they appealing to someone like me and younger? Sure. Yeah, this screen is really cool. But not a lot of people under the age of 25 can afford a car that's north of 40 grand by a good amount. So you got to keep in mind your audience when you're making a car like this. And it's pretty surprising that Volvo, a company that pitches itself as safety head honcho, to have no fixed buttons other than a couple that quite frankly you're not even going to use that much short of the next track for music. And that's really, really shocking, because this car is largely pretty good. I mean, sure, we went over this like lackadaisical transmission and this video game steering, but other than that, this thing is solid and it's a good value. And if you have the technological patience to understand and really hone in on how to use this system, I would recommend you buy one of these things all day long, just for the sake of having something that isn't a C-Class or a 3 Series on the road, right? But there's more to cars than just that. Usability is a large factor, and that is why I cannot recommend this car over a Genesis G70, because the Genesis G70, not only does it give you that 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty, not only does it give you similar power levels, not only does it give you the option for a manual transmission should you want it in a 2.0T, but for a similar price to this, you can get a 3.3-liter twin-turbo all-wheel drive, and you have a user-friendly dash. That car has Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, but it has a lot of physical buttons. So while I love this S60 and I think it is really, really, really cool, if I was going to recommend a car for you in this segment, it would be that Genesis G70. Hyundai did an unbelievable job at developing that car and really positioning it to not only the person like us that wants something that is fun and engaging to drive in that backroads portion, but they also positioned it to be user-friendly to the person that doesn't necessarily care about driving dynamics or just doesn't care about tech and just wants something that's easy to use and approachable. Genesis nailed that where Volvo lags. This car is hard to use to someone that doesn't care to learn, right? So that's all we got today, guys. I'm overall impressed and happy with this Volvo. I think the folks over in Sweden did a really great job developing this, and I think it is a massive leap forward from the previous generation in terms of truly being considered a 3 Series rival. But without being more intuitive, they'll never sell these. That's the bottom line. And that's a shame because, damn it, these look really good, especially in this color. This color is dynamite. Thank you guys for tuning in. As always, I truly appreciate it. I know I sound like a broken record at the end of these videos, but we're gaining in subscriber count every week. And the comments and everything, like, you guys just rock. I can't stress enough how much I appreciate everything. Thank you guys so much. I am super excited for the cars that we have coming up, so stay tuned, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and I will see you guys next week. Drive safe and be safe. Goodbye.